There's three core pillars in AC. There's navigation, there's stealth, and there's combat. Those three pillars have been completely redesigned. We needed to do it because of co-op. You know, I'm seeing your player needs to be synchronized with mine when we're fighting, when you're navigating. So that alone forced us to recode everything. So if we're recoding everything, might as well redesign it.
We had a bunch of features we wanted to add, and we knew we wouldn't be able to use what Black Flag and all the previous Assassins had been using and building upon. It was really cool to come into the AC universe and learn what teams had done before, see why they did certain things, and then also think, well, I've always wanted to do this in an AC. How can we incorporate that? The major feature that we did was combine the climb system and the parkour system. So previously when you were on a climb wall, you were kind of stuck to that climb wall unless you ejected. Now we have transitions from climb directly into step, leap, dive, like all these different moves that as you're scaling a wall, you can just hold right trigger, push towards a beam, and he'll immediately do it like a kick off the wall into that beam and continue running down the facade.
So we redesigned parkour to be more fluid, to give you more freedom, to have more flow. And flow is the basis of fun. I think arguably flow is fun.
Previous games you could only wall up if you were 90 degrees to the wall. So you used to see a lot of boxes or carts kind of stacked up next to the side of walls so you could step on those and then get into a parkour line. We've changed it so you can wall up at angles. So I could be running parallel to a wall, hit A, and he'll just scamper up the side of the wall and then keep on going from there. Running in previous AC games, a lot of time you would get sucked up into the wall run because you're always holding right trigger to run, and that was also your, hey, go up walls move. So you'd try to kind of skid by a corner of a building, and half the time you'd actually go up the wall instead, and that would end your chase or you'd lose the target. So we've added 2 new buttons onto the control mapping. We now have a right trigger and A, which is basically our go up button, and right trigger and B, which is our controlled descent. That allows you to go down, and then standard right trigger, which is like previous AC games. We got instant positive feedback on that from our initial playtests and from people in the building as well. So that was a win off the bat just by adding the new control scheme.
Stealth is supposed to be one of the core pillars of, if not the core pillar of the brand, and it's something that we've always, we've struggled with issues of flow versus finesse. So you want to favor a character moving quickly through the universe. But what happens when you're trying to be sneaky, when you're trying to tail or follow a guard or whatever? The game is still trying to favor that navigation. So this is why we're trying to guess what the player wants, right? And whenever the design or the system tries to guess what the player wants to do, we often or sometimes get it wrong. This is why sometimes you're trying to tail a character and you snap on the wall because the system is favoring that flow for navigation. Well, we've added a stealth mode. So now if you actually want to have finesse, you get into that stealth mode, that crouch mode, and we know that that's what you want to do, so we're not guessing, which means we don't get it wrong.
We kind of felt like the sense of being an assassin is being stealthy, like we always describe him like a blade in the crowd, or being hidden is an important part of the fantasy of being an assassin. I think for most people, an assassin is not somebody that just runs and slashes at people and a swashbuckling guy. He's really like a covert operation guy that tries to just kill his target. For us, it really felt like, well, since we have to do everything from scratch, let's try focusing on that.
Ever since AC1, this is always what we've been striving for. Sometimes we've been doing it better, sometimes not as well, because we've been trying different things. What we really worked on for AC Unity is redesigning stealth in a way where you could have that control back. What happens if you get detected? How can you vanish?
If we want to focus on the stealth, we're going to kind of adapt the known tropes of the genre.
We completely overhauled the way we do detection, the way guards spot you. You generate a last known position and the guards will come and investigate. They will talk, they will try to accuse people sometimes, and they will just, go off on tangents and try to find you.
We always had, like in previous games, a system that tells the detection status of the NPCs toward you.
It used to be NPC centric, it was on the NPC. Now it's around the player, which means that if there's a guard that's spotting you, 10 feet away from you, but the back of the camera, you can actually see that somebody's spotting you, so it's less frustrating.
It's an evolution of the ideas we had, but so far in playtest, the results are really good because I can turn around and I see, okay, that's the guy that sees me, then I can act upon it.
One thing again that was really, really cool in AC1 was how we presented each target. The game is Assassin's Creed, you're an assassin, you work for the assassins. In this game, Arnaud is actually sanctioned by the assassins. You get missions and target kills from the assassins. So stalk your target to find out who the target is. That presentation that we used to do in AC1 that we lost a little bit along the way, I think is a really cool thing because you really get to see who your target is.
As soon as we started investigating that direction, we felt like the game really took a direction that was fun, because you no longer just run to a setup, you really had to reach a rooftop, look over the situation, figure out the way to attack it, and then act on it.
We wanted to give player more agency. We wanted to have players choose their paths, choose their approach, rather than have very scripted missions where what we want you to do is exactly what the mission designer envisioned in his mind. So to achieve this, we developed two major things. AMMs, Adaptive Mission Mechanics, which are ways in which we can bend the rules and allow you to sort of do stuff that might not have been the first thing we picked for you to do. But that's fine. You know, a tail becomes a chase, becomes a locate, becomes, you know, a kill, whatever. And then we have our black box designs. I mean, black boxes are huge three-dimensional setups within a map. So we give you either a monument or a location in the city and tell you this is your sandbox, this is your playground. Now kill a target in there. And then we let you approach it any way you want. Philosophically, it's a lot more like AC1, although AC1 lacked a lot of the variety at a micro level to not make it repetitive. And this is something we've addressed. So hopefully we have sort of the perfect hybrid of both.
When you reach a mission, try to look into different ways to attack it. Just don't pick the easiest way first, just look for opportunities around.
Do you feel like there's a disconnect between the ideal way you want the game played versus how in the wild it's actually played?
Well, that's why we had to make changes to the other systems like the fight. Actually it came out of that reflection. Like if we want players to play stealthily, we have to give them reasons why they have to.
In terms of combat, make it more difficult, make it more challenging, because Assassin's Creed is not a combat game, it's a stealth game. So combat should be a fail state. I mean, combat should be something that happens when you get spotted, and when you resolve combat, you should re-disappear and start the stealth mechanic over again. This is something that we tried to do from the get-go, but we've never quite were able to do it, and hopefully I think we have something pretty solid here. Unity is about playing the game the way you want to play it. If you want to play the game like without stealth and fighting, you can do that. Practice, become better at combat, because our combat system, again, it's not that it's harder because it's frustrating. It's harder because it's deeper in terms of its mechanics.
We knew kind of the feeling we wanted the players to get when he's fighting. It's more like a rock, paper, scissors feeling, or a face-off, like, well, I'm wondering what my enemy is going to do.
It's based on a system where, you know, strike, dodge, parry. Depending on the enemy, different strategies are called.
And that's why we kind of removed counter, because counter kind of felt like the move that allowed you to always win. I think the problem with the counter was actually the counter kills, because that basically by being defensive you could win the fights. We changed them into parries. It's a more active defense, but it doesn't mean that you'll kill the enemy. From the feedback we got in the playtest report is that they feel like the fight is a bit more complex and a bit more challenging. They like that. So you have 4 different types of weapons. Basically you have one weapon you can carry around, one melee weapon. So depending on the types you choose, that will change a bit of how you behave in combat. For example, if you have a long weapon, it's going to be easier to trip enemies to the ground. If you have an axe, it's going to be easier to pull off heavy attacks, but you might be open, might take longer to do just quick attacks.
It needs mastery. Buy better equipment. Our weapons actually have stats now. Before, all the swords, all the weapons had the same stats. Now they actually have stats. Invest, buy a better weapon, buy better gear, and play the game as a fighter. You can do that. It's just that we try to build the game around you being an assassin, but you can still play it the way you want.
There's a bit more strategy to it, and there's the fact that there's no easy weapons really changes the way we look into fights. We can no longer jump into the middle of a group and be sure that I'll kill them all.
If you look at Assassin's Creed, I mean, we've always kept this heading, right? We've always tried to make games that don't necessarily respond to the industry trend in terms of choosing whether the game is harder or easier, or whether the game is more steered towards combat, because, I mean, combat games are selling better now. Like, we make the game that we want to make in terms of what the core pillars and the core meaning of the brand is.
It's just been a really good experience. It's a larger team than I'm used to, so I didn't know how that was going to work out, and it actually, Ubisoft is able to function quite well with as many people working on the game, so that in its own right is very impressive, and I think the world looks fantastic. It's very organic and also fits with the system, so looking at it right now I'm very impressed that we're actually able to pull that together.
Usually when the game comes up, I look a lot at the forums. What I'm looking to the most is how they perceive the system, the way we modify the system to make it new again. We really took a gamble by just stripping some parts of the huge scope of the previous games, but really focusing on the core pillars and trying to refresh them for a next generation of consoles. If players do feel like it's a new experience, but it still feels like Assassin's Creed, I'll be glad about all the choices we made and the hard work we all did.